Welcome to our webinar, 8 Spheres of Leadership. I'm Matt Peoples, founder and director of the Kairos Network, and I love getting to do these webinars with you guys because we get to sit down with some of the coolest people ever, and Mac is definitely in that category. Mac is somebody that I've gotten to work with over the years, and much of what I do in leadership training, even how I think about training the people around me, really, Mac, comes from the work you've done, whether it's trainings I've sat in on with or watching your YouTube channel, which, by the way, your YouTube channel is amazing. I love that. So today we get to talk about something called 8 Spheres of Leadership. And I love this concept because, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you were emailing a couple of us and you said, I'll never forget this because this is so funny. You said, I have a training that I made that I forgot I made. And it's just sitting down somewhere. So Matt, could you just tell us, one, it's just true to how you develop, man. You just develop so much stuff that it's like, oh yeah, I developed this amazing training, totally forgot about it. But I think it's perfect for this time. So could you share with us a little bit more of like how you developed this tool and what made you want to develop it?
Yeah, I sure will. And that tells you a little something about my memory. It's so bad. I came across, I was looking for something in my Evernote, and this file popped up. I was like, wait a minute, I forgot about it. I created it 4 years ago. So we released it as a free tool, excuse me, just a few weeks ago. But yeah, so Matt, Proverbs 11:15 says, without wise leadership, a nation falls. And as I think about that verse, and I think about my own leadership, there are so many times that I'm foolish or unwise in the way I use my time, because there's a world of distractions around us. There's a million things pulling at us. And so, you know how it is. You'll be 3 hours, 4 hours into your day, and you're going, what am I thinking? Why am I doing what I'm doing right now? And we got distracted. We got pulled into something. And here's what I've discovered. When I'm unwise about the way I use time, it creates vulnerabilities in my own leadership, vulnerabilities for my team, because the way I use time, it can hurt them, and vulnerabilities for our church or the organization we lead. And so wise leadership, so much of wise leadership, yes, it's making wise decisions, but it's also making wise decisions about how I utilize my time. And so I was in a season several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I was in this season, crazy busy. I was innovating something new and being pulled a million directions, and I was boom, 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 and we were just running and gunning, airplanes, just busy. And I finished some event, got in my car, and I had a long drive home, which I'm so thankful for. So I'm driving home, I'm processing the event, and probably an hour into it, I'm like, wow, I'm taking notes, I'm writing things down. I'm like, wait a minute, this is the first time I've had time by myself to think in weeks. And so I was just soaking in the thinking time, And so I began to process it, and I thought, how else do I use time? What are other ways I use time that I'm missing out on, And so I asked myself the question, how does a leader use time? And I wrote down these 8 things. When I got back to the office, I, drew the thing up, and I started evaluating the way I use my time through that grid. I was like, oh my goodness, the danger that I'm setting myself up, my own leadership up, and the church I lead is in danger because of the way I am using my time right now. So that's why I created the tool, to help me look, and as an evaluation tool to go, and a planning tool, how am I using my time? Am I using it wisely?
Well, and I love that you developed this, because I think a lot of times too, there's the the time wasters. And I think time wasting can come from not understanding maybe what realm we're supposed to be operating in, which is why I love this sphere. And we'll show you guys that sphere soon. But also, I think, especially in ministry, I think that sometimes we have a guilt when we're doing one thing that we should be doing something else.
Yeah.
Like, oh, if I'm spending time by myself doing strategic planning and I'm not answering that phone call that came in or answering that email, am I really doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And you feel guilty when you're doing the thing you should be doing, because the other thing over here, and you don't quite know how to balance it out or to organize it. Yeah. And so that's what was so helpful about this, is just being able to realize that, while life is not compartmentalized as much, we can think through, and I think another way to call it would be the 8 roles that we have as a leader. Yeah. Because these are different areas that I work in my life. And when you unpack this and in this training, and this is what I love about the training, it's a short training. The training video is shorter probably than the webinar you're going to be on right now. So it is worth your time. But what I love about the sphere is it just helped me think, oh, okay, I can be in this role right now. And that's where I need to be. And that's where God wants me to be. Yeah. And it's okay that I'm not in this role over here, because in this moment, I need to be right here.
You bring up a really important point. When we think about time management, we just think, oh yeah, it's writing down my tasks and blocking them out, whatever. Very logical, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, time management is very logical, but that's not the case. Time management is not just logical, it's emotional and it's spiritual. And so when we begin to think through, it's easy, sit down, write down the task. Here's what I have to do today. Very, very logical. But when you go to implement, it's emotional. So, you got this thing you're working on, but somebody, hey, can you talk for a few minutes? All of a sudden the emotion comes up. What do? I have to get this done, but emotionally I feel pulled over here. And so that's why time management is so difficult. It's not the logical part that's hard. It's the emotional part that's hard. It's a constant battle.
I love that point, because I never thought of it that way, as being an emotional decision as much as it is just a logical, like, hey, we've got to get this done. And so I tell you what, guys, we're not going to hold you off anymore. I'm going to show you, and this is from Mac's workbook. And Mac, one of the things I love about the trainings that you do is you not only pull together a concise training with easy handles for us to hold on to as leaders in the real world. Because I think some people are just kind of the academic, like, hey, here's the pie in the sky way it should work. It doesn't really work that way. What I love about the tools that you develop is they really work in the day-to-day grind of leadership. And a great resource that you added with this training, which, by the way, guys, I don't want you to think we're selling you anything, is free. Mac's giving this away for free. Is, you give a great ebook with incredible prompt questions throughout the training that can really help you dig into this. So I wanted to take an opportunity. I wanted to show you guys, and this is from the ebook that Mac released, show you guys the wheel he's talking about, and let him kind of just give you a 30,000 foot overview really quick of it. And we'll just kind of dig into different pieces of it. If you guys have questions, throw them in the questions section here, because love to respond to what you've got. But let me screen share this over here for you guys really quick, so you can kind of see this tool and get an idea of what we're talking about. So Mac, here's the tool. Could you kind of just walk us through this?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started thinking through how do leaders use time, these are the 8 things I came up with. Now, the way I designed it, the way it's designed, you'll notice that praying, there's the praying sphere. Leaders have to pray. Nehemiah, we see the long prayers, the short prayers of Nehemiah. Leaders have to pray. And so that sphere encompasses all the others. It goes around all the others. We can talk more about that in a minute. The growing sphere is the next one inside. And again, we always have to be growing. That's why that one goes around the entire circle, because it's something I need to be growing at all times, every day, through everything. But then when you get to the inner part, you'll see that there are 3 thinking spheres and 3 acting spheres. So in the thinking spheres, these are things I'm doing as a leader where I'm just using my brain. I'm thinking, I'm processing. And there are 3 things you do when you're thinking or processing. One's you're dreaming, or you're evaluating what, you're dreaming about the future, you're evaluating the past, or you're planning what needs to be done next. So, so one of those three things is happening when you're in your thinking time, okay? And then in the acting spheres, there are three of those. I'm either spending time developing my team, developing people, or second, relating to my team or relating to other people, or third, executing the plan. I've dreamed, I've evaluated, I've planned, and now I got to get to the point of execution. So I can take my week and go back and scan over my week and say, how much time did I spend on these? And it doesn't have to be balanced by any means whatsoever, but how much time did I spend on these, and what did that look like? So for example, this morning I had my prayer time. And then after my prayer time, I'm working on a new book. So I spent a couple hours just studying for that book. Well, that's my growing time, because I want to write out of my own personal growth, right? And so did a couple hours doing that. Well, then I went into my planning time. I opened up my planning tool, which I use Asana, and I was looking at different tasks and planning different tasks and thinking through different things. And then it's time for the webinar. And so I jump on the webinar. Well, this is developing. I'm in the developing sphere right now. And when this is over with, I'm going to go to the gym at 4 o'clock. I'm going to the gym, and that'll be growing time because I'm growing myself by going to the gym. And then 5 o'clock on is relating time. It's relating time with my wife, and grandkids will probably come over today. So what you'll see is, my day consisted of several things. Now, what I just described to you, guess what? What I'm not doing I'm not doing any dreaming today. I'm not executing on anything today, and I'm not evaluating anything today. That's okay. That's totally fine. But here's what I discovered in that moment of crisis 4 years ago. If I keep doing these things, if I kept this pattern that I'm using today, and next week and the next week and the next week, I'm not dreaming, I'm not executing, I'm not evaluating, I'm being set up for a problem.
So are you, I love in fact, maybe you could just kind of share a little bit more. What does the prayer part look like for you? Yeah. And I love how one of the things that just really stood out to me about this tool is the fact that prayer and growing are so prominent. Prayer being the most prominent, I feel like, because it's that outer wheel. And what does that look like for you as a leader? Is it the same time every day? Is it a process? Do you have several different tools you use? How are you using that? And are you doing it differently depending on what area you're kind of working in that sphere?
Yeah, good question. I'm going to answer it two ways. Okay. So in the morning, when I have my defined prayer time and my quiet time, I don't call it quiet time. I call it daily encounter. And because I want to encounter God every day. Right. And so it's my encounter time. So when I have that time, not always, but majority of the time, I follow a little pattern. It just helps me. Okay. And I call it START. I created several years ago from Psalm 5:3. I wake in the morning, Lord. I wake in the morning, Lord, and I wait in expectation. And so, like, God, when I wake up in the morning, I want to wait in expectation. So how do I start my day? And so what I do is S is scripture reading, T, and so I'll read a paragraph and write it in my own words. I journal it. T is thought for the day. What's the one thing the Holy Spirit pulled out of that impressed on my heart? A is application. How am I going to apply it? R, review yesterday. God, what'd you do yesterday? What can I praise you for? What do I need to confess? And then T is talk about today. And I look at my calendar and plan my day and pray through my day. So that's one answer, Matt.
Yeah, I love that.
That defined how I start my day with God. Okay. But the other answer is this, and I think just as important, if not more important. We know Paul said in 1 Thessalonians 5, pray without ceasing. And we all know that, and we know that's important. And so what it doesn't mean, prayer is a two-way conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so here's what I think what Paul's saying in that verse. One thing I think Paul's saying in that verse, prayer is a two-way conversation. And so pray without ceasing does not mean that I am constantly talking to God. That's not what that means. It means I'm in a posture of prayer at all times. So I don't have to be talking to God all day, but I'm a posture of listening when I'm not talking. And so, so I think, pray without ceasing for me as I'm going throughout the day with a posture of, God, I want to hear from you this day. Now, because I did that final T, in my morning, start time, then I've already prayed through my day. Now I'm looking for his hand. I'm listening for his voice throughout the day, so I can respond the way he wants me to. I think as visionary leaders, especially, guilty. We get a vision from God, and we hear from God, go start this church, or go start this thing, or go create this thing. We take that vision, we grab a hold of it, and we take off running, and we run hard, and we stop listening to God. And so we're running down and then eventually we get tired, and we're staring, shoulders on our, hands on our hips, going, breathing heavy, going, God, where are you? God said, I took a right turn, a mile back. You just didn't go with me. And so we weren't listening. God's always speaking. We're just not always listening. So pray without ceasing is, as you go through your day, posture your heart for listening. I share this real quick. I heard a pastor say this, and it radically impacted my prayer life. He said, when you wake up and you start your day and you begin to talk to God about the things that are on his heart before you talk to him about the things that are on your heart.
Wow.
Talk to him about the things that are on his mind. That one sentence blew my mind. I was like, I got to change the way I pray. And sorry, man, I'm excited about this. Here's the other thing about prayer. This question hit me one day when I was doing a walk one morning, just walking and praying a while back. I was praying, and I stopped, and I was like, God, oh my gosh, am I praying or am I complaining?
That's huge.
And it hit me. I said, God, let's take COVID. I can complain about political environment. I can complain about COVID. I can complain about things going on in my church. I can complain about people. But when I go into the presence of God and I complain, I'm getting things off my chest. I'm not really expecting things to change. And so I'm going to God with a frustration, but am I really allowing, his presence and his power to shape my thinking? I go in complaining and I leave still negative about it.
Yeah.
And that tells me I've not experienced the presence and power of God in that situation, because I'm just complaining. I'm not praying.
That's huge. I love that thought. I love that thought about, my praying on God's priorities or my priorities. I think that's big. And I love how central it is, because a lot of times you see a tool and it's an afterthought. It's not even mentioned. And that is the core problem of leaders. It's often an afterthought for us. Now, Heather's got a really great question here. She says, where does the stewing, procrastinating, and avoiding fit in? Stewing, procrastinating, and avoiding. Thank you for the honesty, Heather. We're all feeling that one.
Yeah. The stewing, procrastinating. What was the third word?
Avoiding.
Okay. I was just looking at this a bit ago. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 11, Paul says, and of this gospel, I was appointed a herald, apostle, and teacher. What was Paul good at? And he was an incredible apostle. He was an incredible teacher. He's an incredible evangelist. If I'm stewing, procrastinating, then there's a couple things. One, am I functioning in my strengths? Question I ask my team on a regular basis, at least quarterly, what percentage of your time are you operating in your strengths? If they tell me it's less than 80%, because nobody's going to operate in 100% of their strengths. If they tell me, well, Mac, right now I'm operating in about 60% of my strengths. Okay, what can I do and what can you do to get you back into the 80%? Because you see, when you think about this, was it Heather?
Yeah.
Heather, when I go to Starbucks and I'm working on something that I hate to do, I'll sit there and work on something. I hate this. I'm going to do it, but I don't like it. And I look up at the clock and it's been 10 minutes. But when I go to Starbucks and I'm working on something I love to do, I'm working, I look up at my clock, it's been 4 hours or 2 hours. And so you got to look at it, why am I procrastinating? The second thing, so look at your strengths. The second thing I would say we have to look at in those situations, let me go to the stewing. If we're stewing, it could be that somebody's given us or delegated a task to us, and the why doesn't make sense. The why hasn't connected with. They may have a why, but we don't know what it is. And so I'm doing something without a why, and I'm going to be mad about that. Okay. And then the third thing is sometimes we're procrastinating, and you know what? You should. It's just not that important. And so if I'm procrastinating on something, I have to ask myself the question, am I operating out of my strengths? And is it really that important? And there are times I have to procrastinate on purpose and go, you know what? This isn't worth listen, we ask people, how'd you spend your time today? We don't spend time. We invest time. So is it worth the investment?
That's really interesting. And I've never heard anybody talk about procrastination in such a positive light as an evaluation tool for what it is you are doing. I think that's really cool. I love too, the point you made. Am I working in my wheelhouse or my strengths? And I think a lot of times, there's that part of a leader where you need some more self-awareness to figure out where your strengths are. And if you're somebody like that, a couple great tools that have helped me in the past, actually a recent tool is My Working Genius. If you go to workinggenius.com, Patrick Lencioni, I know Ben Griffin and I were telling you, you got to do that. Ben Griffin turned me on to it. It's one of those things. I took it. If you use the code at the table, all one word, it's 50% off. But we get no commission. He doesn't even know we're sharing this right now. But if you use that code, it's 50% off. I took that test and then immediately bought 3 other copies for the rest of my team. We took it as a team because, one, I was curious not just how I could be working in my kind of areas of strength, my wheelhouse areas, but where are my team's wheelhouse areas? And am I asking them to do things that aren't in their wheelhouse? So for example, without diving too deep into his tool, galvanizing is one of my working geniuses, bringing people together, that and invention, like building tools. That's where I'm in my wheelhouse. And my communications coordinator at the church, galvanizing is like one of her working frustrations, the area that like sucks the life out of her. You give her a task though, she wants to come alongside and help. She wants to finish it. Like she is my opposite, which is a huge help for us. But I would constantly be like, just go recruit your team. Because for me, it's natural. What I was essentially asking her to do was to work completely outside of her wheelhouse and not instead kind of come alongside her and help her in that area where she's not as gifted, but I'm thriving. And so I think when you do a simple tool like that, it can be a huge help. So that's one you can check out. What are some tools that you've used with your team to help them identify what their working strengths might be?
Yeah. Strength finders is one. Another one that I've used that, because some people don't really understand strength finders. They take the test, they get the results, and they go, I really don't know what to do with this. So a lot of times I'll just ask people, tell me what your top 3 strengths are. People have a hard time with that, but you have to push them a little bit to begin to really help them define it well. And so I think that's another one. And then Marcus Buckingham has a book called Go Put Your Strengths to Work. And it's a simple green red card system. You keep a green card, and I think it's a red card for a week, and you write down everything you're doing. If it brought you energy, you write down what you did on a green card. If it drained you, you write it down on a red card. At the end of the week, you stack your red cards and your green cards. You take your green cards and say, okay, based on what I did that it brought me energy, what are my strengths? And it really helps you clarify what your strengths are in your own language. So I love that.
That's a brilliant tool. I've never heard of that before. You said it was Marcus Buckingham.
Marcus Buckingham was one of the founders of the Strength Finders. He was at Gallup. He left Gallup So he no longer had the copyright to use strength finders. So he created this real simple identify your own strengths tool, but very few people know about it.
Oh man, that's what I love. Tools don't have to be complex to be helpful.
Yeah.
And so I think that's great. I think whatever tool you use, there's also, I've been a big fan of DISC is another good one. And the one that I've really been impacted by a lot is Enneagram, because Enneagram is that ancient personality typing that came out of the desert monastic movements in like the 5th century. But what I love about that is it has the science that backs it up.
Yeah.
It also has the spiritual component. So it looks at your life through a spiritual lens, but it looks at the light and the dark. And it recognizes that some of your greatest strengths can also create some of your greatest weaknesses.
Yeah.
And so whatever tool you use, the one encouragement I would also add is don't allow that to put you in a box, but rather allow it to be an evaluation tool that helps you kind of move forward. So looking again at this wheel, because I love the brilliance of this thing. Looking at this wheel again, I want to ask you, if you're thinking about your wheelhouse and your strengths, do you actively like look in the wheel and say, okay, well, this is something that I'm going to more naturally gravitate toward? So being somebody that loves to generate tools and develop people, I'm guessing you're going to naturally run to the dreaming and the developing pretty easily. Are there areas here where you kind of have to like force yourself to move?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So dreaming is big for me because one of my strength finders is futuristic. Planning is big for me because one of my strength finders is strategic, and developing others is big for me because one of my strength finders is relating. So those three, developing and relating, those three would be my top three in this particular thing. I am terrible at execution. I mean, I'm so bad at it. And so that's one that, and then in certain situations, I'm bad at relating too. So, and then praying. I would say I'm not real strong at praying either. I want to be better at that. And
that's why it's right in the forefront, all around you.
That's the real reason it's out there. Yeah. So yeah, there are some I'm going to be good at, some I'm not going to be good at. But I need to, like with me, I need good people around me who are good at executing, because I'm not. But I still have to execute. Now, executing doesn't always mean something different. If I prepare, if I plan a training session, and then an hour later I go lead it, and I'm executing it. It's just I'm not good at executing details.
So let me ask you a question, because I think a lot of us leaders, the temptation of a leader is to just only work in your strength areas. And then the other temptation, I think, is to bring people around you that are more like you. And then it creates kind of an off balance. So how do you evaluate the people you bring around you to make sure you are bringing a well-rounded team around you that can help you in your weakness areas? And how do you kind of challenge yourself to do some of the things you don't want to do, but just need to get done?
Yeah. So to the first part, when you study through like I think it's Colossians 4, Romans, I think it's Romans 12. Paul's writing, and as he finishes these letters, he says, "Hey, to so and so, my dear friend, to so and so, my fellow prisoner, to so and so, who was like a mother to me." Here's the thing: when you read that years ago, I was like, "Wow, Paul was a relational leader. He knew these people." Most time when we work with a staff or key leaders, if you're a church plant, you got your 5 to 7 key leaders around you. Most of the time we're working side by side to go advance the gospel, right? I mean, hey, we're an army and we're advancing the gospel. We're side by side, but rarely are we soul to soul. And so this is why it's important that relating sphere is so important. In the relating sphere, it's not, yes, it is sitting and having coffee together, but it's saying, hey, I want to know about your calling. What I want to know what the freshest thing God's doing in your life, having soul care conversations. I want to know what your disc profile is. I want to know what your strength finder is. I do a leadership coaching group, and it's 9 sessions, and I teach leaders how to lead a team, and it's 8 components of how to lead a team. And the majority of a bunch of those components are ways you get to know somebody on your team so you can maximize who they are. I think a lot of leaders, because they're not good at the relating, and relating means, I heard Hobble say this years ago, it's the definition of community. And I think as a team, we need to be community. Definition of community is this: knowing and being known, loving and being loved, serving and being served, celebrating and being celebrated. Now, you take that definition of community and say, do I have that with my team? Do I have that with my team? Because you see, as the nucleus, no matter what you're leading, as the nucleus of a team, that's where the core DNA of your church or organization is created.
Yeah.
That's what I want to reproduce. I want to reproduce what I'm building in my team. But so many times you got a lead pastor who's got a small team around him, and they don't like each other, and they don't know each other, and they're certainly not celebrating each other, and there's no biblical community. So what are we reproducing? You know? And so in that coaching group, I teach, hey, here's how you get to know your team. And then here's the other thing I think we do a lot of times as leaders. We take somebody on our team, let's say they're a chainsaw, and we start, trying to use them as a hammer or an axe. And we get frustrated at them because of their lack of production, but really it's our fault because our lack of understanding of who they are. And so God has given me a team not to use, but to steward. And if I hired the wrong person with the wrong strengths and the wrong gifts, that's on me, And so I do have to look and say, God, what's the vision and mission you've given us? What type of people do you need around me? And who are you calling? Who are you calling around me? And let's build a healthy team to go do God things together. Here's a question, and I threw out to my team years and years ago. At the beginning of the year, guys, what are we trusting God for that we can't do? As a team, not individually. What do we want to see God do this year through our church? As a team, we got our goals. What are 3 dangerous prayers that we can pray? And as guys, as you head into 2021, ask your team, hey, what are 3 dangerous prayers we can pray for 2021 that go beyond what we're able to do? And man, now you're trusting God together. You're getting to know the character nature of God together. If you're not trusting God together as a team, you're not growing in your understanding of God's nature as a team. And I think it's important. The Bible's not written to an individual, it's written to communities, it's written to, but yet as Americans, we read it through the lens of an individual, but he's trying to grow our faith. So I want to know, is everybody on my team, are they growing in their faith? But are we growing in our faith as a team? Are we seeing God work?
Yeah, that's huge that you bring that up because, you lead long enough, you have team members that come in and come out, transition in, transition out. And something I like to do when team members transition out is always do that kind of debrief interview, which is always fun, because that's when somebody's the most honest, right? When they got nothing to lose, they're on the way out. And, it was interesting. Your team's desiring that because 2 of the people that we had to transition out recently, or they transitioned out for, really healthy, good reasons. I said, well, hey, what would you change? And they said, I loved it when we had that rhythm of reading scripture together and doing our leadership time. And I think, for a lot of us, we can get in seasons where we're really great with it in our team and we're pouring into that. And then all of a sudden we get out of that rhythm. And something that really hit with me was, man, my team desires this. This isn't just something I'm kind of thrusting on them. They wish that was there more. So, you probably have team members that really do desire that, but they wouldn't necessarily maybe express that to you because of the position they're in, or maybe just the health of the culture as a whole. So I love that insight. I think that's huge.
A great question to ask is, are the people on my team closer to God because they're on my team? Do they know God better because they're on my team? Is their faith stronger because they're on my team? Are they walking in freedom because they're on my team? Matthew 11, my burden is easy, my yoke is light. That. How many pastors is that true for? How many staff members is that? Very few. They're burdened, they're stressed, they're overworked, they're burned out. Their heart for ministry is going cold because they're serving Jesus with all their heart, but they're burning themselves out in the midst of it. And they're going, I don't know what he means when he says my burden is light or my yoke is easy, my burden. I don't know what he means. I don't get it. I don't make any sense to me because that's not my reality, And I think there's a lot of staff members saying that. And I think I think it's the reality because we don't understand the purpose and the power of God. Okay, two things. The root of the problem, I think, is we don't understand the power of God and we don't understand the purpose of God. And so when I understand the power of God and the purpose of God, it will change the way I use time. If I misunderstand the power of God, guess what I do? I use my time to try to fix things, try to manipulate things instead of trusting him first. If I don't understand the purpose of God for me, the church, the kingdom, if I don't understand the purpose of God, I will misuse my time. Because what I'll do, I'll do this. And I'm taking on things I shouldn't be taking on. When God's going, whoa, 1 Corinthians 12, wait a minute, you're supposed to be a body. Delegate, use a team. No, I got this. I misunderstand the purpose of God. Therefore, I misuse my time. When you misunderstand the purpose and the power of God, you will misuse your time and you will be burnt out. And I think so many pastors are burnt out, especially lead pastors, because they're preaching 50 out of 52 weeks. They've not built a team around them. They're totally, if you're into APES, they're totally ignoring that type of team around them. And man, my yoke is heavy and the burden is heavy because I'm ignoring the power and presence of God, and I'm trying to do things my way rather than as a body, as a team. And I don't know, man. I don't know what the answer is.
I totally resonate with that because one of my mentors, Greg Burst, good friend, leads just an amazing ministry in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And I remember when I was working on his team, he said, you know what, in ministry, sometimes you just have to take the S off your chest. Like, you're not the savior. And I think a lot of times that's part of the problem is we start to functionally think we are. And even when you love, like, I love preaching, I absolutely love it. What I've come to learn is, when I had that season where I preached 50, 52 weeks, like, it was the first time ever that I handed that off to somebody else. And I was just like, I'm just so, I don't even want to be in that pulpit right now. Like, I'm so happy I'm not there, because I think we can even burn out in our gifting. But what I've also learned is the joy of passing that off. You pass that off to somebody else. You train somebody else in that. For me, it is almost more fun to watch somebody else preach an impactful message that you've poured into than to do it yourself. And I think that's the real benefit we have here. And that's what I love about all of the stuff you release is not just about what's good for me. It's helpful for me, but it's also done in a way where I can share that and build up the people around me. So it kind of leads into my last two questions for you.
Can I make one more point real quick? Because I think it's so important. This leads to the developing sphere. Okay. One of the things I would always ask my team is this: who are your three? Who are your 2 or 3? Okay. Who are you? We always say, hey, you got to replace yourself. No, you don't. Your job is not to replace yourself. Your job is to reproduce yourself. And whoever your boss is, it's their job to replace you, but I want to go to a boss, and I've literally done it, gone to a boss and say, hey, I'm not planning on leaving, but if I leave, I promise you, I'm going to bring you 3 names. And I would tell my team, I need to know your 3 names. Who are the 3 people you're reproducing yourself in to teach how to do what you do? Doesn't have to be 3, it could be 2. But here's what happens, Matt. If we ignore development in our church, okay, let's say I got a student pastor, okay, and he's doing a great job and the quality and quantity ministry is doing good, then he leaves. Then what happens is we have a transition dip. Quality and quantity goes down. Then we got to find somebody new, many times from the outside. Okay, now they got to learn our culture, they got to learn the people, they got to learn our systems, and it takes a while before they get back up to speed where things were. And so if your team is not, if you're not doing development as a lead pastor, training other people to preach, and your team's not doing development, then you're setting your church up. You're creating a vulnerability point for your church to experience the transition dip where quality and quantity will go down, and it will slow the advancement of the mission of your kingdom outreach.
I love that you point that out, because that definitely leads in these last two questions, because I think even though you developed this 4 years ago, it feels like it was developed for the time we're in. This time of pandemic and crisis that has gone on far longer than anybody thought. And even though there's vaccines on the horizon, people are realizing, hey, those are going to take a lot longer before, they're really effective for us in church. And so, a lot of pastors, a lot of leaders are in this phase of, okay, I've got to figure out what to do next and how to navigate that. And I think this is an incredible tool for that. So how can they use that for that? But then too, how can, in really simple ways, somebody take this tool that's been developed and not just use it for themselves, but pour it into the team around them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I would do is I would download the tool, have your team download the tool, have them print the workbook, have them, you can listen to it. One way is listen to it as a team, and then make sure everybody has an hour set aside after you listen to it. I think it's 24 minutes audio.
Oh yeah.
Video. It's got a little video with it too. But 24 minutes to 22 minutes, listen to it, and then say, hey, over the next hour, I want you to go write, answer the questions, and then let's come back and talk about it. Don't listen to it and then talk about it. Listen to it, answer the questions, then come back and talk about it. And I promise you're going to have a pretty robust discussion.
Yeah, I think that's huge, because sometimes we talk about leadership development, and most people are like, I don't even know where to begin. But that's what I love about how you talk about leadership development and tools. We were sitting in a leadership pipeline training, which if you guys are ever want to develop a system for training leaders, you need to connect with Mac. We've got areas you can connect with him that we're going to post up after this webinar, but we're in his leadership pipeline building process right now, and it is incredible. We're doing it all virtual, which is a first for us. And so that's been incredible. What I love about that
for me too.
you took in our last session, you said, hey, what are the 4 core competencies that we need in this specific ministry? I forget the area we talked about. So we all just threw out these random things, no prep time for you. Literally 2 minutes per competency, you put together a competency sheet that would allow you to walk with that leader and help them develop in those areas. 2 minutes or less on each competency, seeing them for the first time. And so I think that style of just taking something like this and having those questions, which is the other thing I think you do really well, is just developing questions and just saying, hey, let's just read through this together. Because I think you've said it to me over and over. It's not so much about the content, but it's about the discussion that's generated and, the opportunity to really dig into that principle. That's really powerful.
Yeah. What we call development in the church is not development. It's more dumping information rather than producing transformation. So we need to let people process, talk, try, debrief. We don't do enough of that. We use talking more than we do asking, telling more than asking. And that's why my whole development process is all about asking. It's all about asking, because and the goal is not discussion. The goal is discovery. Every time I lead a discussion, I want people to discover something about themselves to help them take their next step as a spiritual leader. That's what leadership development is. It's not dumping everything they need to know. It's helping them identify their next step they need to take as a spiritual leader.
No, that's huge. That's huge. No, I've loved that process. Mac, we're, we've got this tool here, the 8 Spheres of Leadership, which is free, incredible. But you also have some great tools around writing questions, things like that. What are the best resources people could find if they want to dig into putting together content for core competencies, or just the question writing stuff that you do so well?
Yeah. One thing is, if you go to multiplygroup.org and click on store, you're going to see I've got a series called the Discipling Leaders series. and it's 8 training sessions for the leader level. There's 6 sessions for the leader of leaders level, and then I just started writing this month how to lead a ministry, and so hopefully that'll be out mid this year, and then I'll finish writing that. So at that website you can access the books which have the content and questions already written. But I do have an e-course called Lead with Questions, Leading with Questions. And it's, I think it's 3 or 4 sessions, I don't remember, but it teaches you as a leader how to use questions to create a culture of innovation, development, and evaluation. And so there are sections on each of those. And it's all about, as leaders, so many leaders will tell you, yeah, I'm not very good at developing, and yeah, I wish my staff was more innovative because I'm the only one that has ideas, and yeah, we're not real good at evaluating. It's because we as the primary leader, we go in and we share and we talk and we talk. And what this course does, it teaches you as a leader, how do I ask questions to draw those things out, to create the culture of evaluation, development, and innovation.
God, that's huge. I love, when we started walking through some of that in our training with you, I actually started incorporating that into my preaching. So that at the end of these virtual sessions where you don't get to see everybody in person, we just had a few takeaway questions so that people could just kind of further digest some more what was going on. So I love the stuff that you're working on. Mac, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I want to encourage you guys, if this was a help for you, we've got all those links and resources. Check out the 8 Spheres training. The training itself.
We didn't give them the link. multiplygroup.org/8 spheres. The number 8 spheres.
Awesome. So we'll dump that in right now so you guys have it here. And then also we'll send you guys a follow-up PDF. But I want to encourage you, if it's a blessing to you, this is free training. So use it with your team, share it with people around you that you think might find it a blessing. If you want, share this webinar out. We've got it streaming live right now on Facebook. You could just go over to the Kairos Network on Facebook and you can share that out with anybody you find helpful, or we'll dump out a follow-up link where you can rewatch it and you can share that out with other people. Mac, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and the opportunity to connect with us. And, definitely guys, check out Mac's resources, check out his YouTube channel. Is also incredible and just filled with amazing free resources. But Mac, thank you. You truly are a blessing to the church, and thanks for taking time with us today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Awesome.